Isabel was pouring coffee into her cup when the doorbell rang. A pristine white envelope sat neatly in the mailbox, no logo. No sign of who sent it, just her name and address, handwritten in a sharp, slanted script. She frowned, wiped her hands, and tore open the edge of the envelope. Inside was a stiff, formal piece of paper. The Hughes family respectfully announces. Lucas Adrian Hughes, our son, brother, and friend, passed away on October 12th in a car accident. The funeral will be held on the 17th at St. Paul's Chapel, Boston. We invite you to join us in bidding farewell. No personal note. Her name wasn't even listed among the loved ones. Isabel wasn't sure what she felt more: shock, grief, or disconnection. Lucas Hughes, the man who had once been her whole world. The man she had loved for 2 long years. The man who once promised to take her to Paris and who used to say, "As long as you're breathing, I'll never let you go." The man who ended everything with one short message: "I think we need time apart." No explanation. No goodbye. And from that day forward, Isabel had never seen him again. She sat frozen on the kitchen chair, holding the invitation, the scent of coffee now lost. In her mind, memories came flooding back: the sound of Lucas playing guitar in the evenings, the scent of the wooden cabinet he built by hand, and those smoky gray eyes that always made her soften, even when they fought. That love, though ended in silence, had never truly disappeared. It had only been buried, tucked away in a corner of memory labeled, "Do not open." But now, when he was no longer here, instinctively, Isabel called her best friend Miriam as if seeking shelter. "You don't have to go," Miriam said quickly, as if she could read Isabel's mind. "You don't owe him anything anymore." Isabel nodded but said nothing. "But if you feel like you need closure, if you need to see with your own eyes that it really is over, then you should go. Not for him. For you." 3 days later, Isabel took an early train to Boston. In her hand was a weathered brown tote and a small bouquet of white flowers she'd arranged herself. Not roses, not the usual funeral lilies, but lily-of-the-valley kind she once planted on the balcony of the apartment they had shared. Lucas had said it was the scent of peace. She stepped off the platform and took a cab to the church. The car passed by familiar streets where she and Lucas once held hands shopping, stopped to kiss in the snow. Now it was just scenery for a goodbye she wasn't invited to. St. Paul's Chapel stood tall and solemn among old trees. The church bell rang precisely at 10 a.m. Isabel walked inside, heart clenched. Immediately she felt the tension in the air. A few heads turned as she entered. The glances weren't curious, they were accusatory. Lucas's mother Florence sat in the front row, her expression stern, eyes like steel. When she saw Isabel, she leaned in and whispered to Lucas's sister Vanessa. Vanessa's face darkened. Isabel quietly walked to the back pew, sat down, and tried to steady her breath. She didn't expect a welcome. She was only there to say goodbye in silence and leave. But silence was not granted. As the priest began to speak, solemn and even, a harsh whisper cut through the middle of his sermon. "She shouldn't even be here." Isabel froze. Then Vanessa's voice rang out cold as ice. "She's the one who broke him. She made Lucas into someone he no longer was." All eyes turned toward Isabel. She didn't respond, didn't defend herself. But her heart trembled, and her hands clenched the bouquet tightly, as if holding on to the last piece of dignity she had left. After a beat of silence, the priest cleared his throat. "Everyone, please remain calm," he said, then turned toward Isabel. "Miss Isabel, please stay." Lucas left a letter, and in it he wrote clearly, "I want this letter read aloud if she is present." The entire room held its breath. Isabel stood stunned. She had never imagined that Lucas still had something to say to her. The priest retrieved an envelope from inside his book of scripture. It was yellowed, sealed with red wax. On it, Lucas's handwriting so familiar to her it hurt. "For Isabel, read if she's still willing to listen." Isabel stood, her legs weak, her hands trembling as she accepted the envelope. No one said a word. No one laughed. No one stopped her. She took a deep breath and began to read. Isabel clutched the letter as if she were holding the full weight of a heart that had never gotten to say what it needed to. The church was so quiet she could hear the paper crinkle as she opened the envelope. A few judgmental eyes were still fixed on her. But now, Isabel was no longer afraid. Not because she was ready, but because she knew if she didn't read it, she'd spend the rest of her life haunted by unanswered questions. She glanced at the first line, then looked up. "This letter Lucas wrote it to me. And as he requested, I will read it in front of everyone." Her voice trembled slightly but remained clear. Steady. She took a deep breath and began. "Isabel, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to see your face as you do. And it might also mean you were brave enough to attend my funeral even though I'm not sure I deserved that. I'm not writing this to be forgiven. I know I don't have the right to ask for that. I just want, for the first time in all these years, to say what I couldn't while I still had time. I loved you. Foolishly, imperfectly, and sometimes selfishly. I loved you when you laughed at my terrible jokes. I loved you when you stayed quiet while I raged. I loved you most when you left because I knew I had lost the most precious thing in my life." Isabel paused. Someone behind her exhaled sharply. She didn't turn around. She continued. "I lied when I said I needed time. The truth is, I needed courage to love you the right way. Instead of hiding you from the pressure of my family, from expectations I wasn't strong enough to fight. You once asked me, 'Do you love me or just the way I make you feel strong?' I didn't answer. Because the truth was I was afraid you'd disappear if I answered honestly. And now you really are gone. And I couldn't live with the emptiness not because you left, but because I didn't have the courage to ask you to stay. You were light. And to shut every door that could have led me toward it." Isabel felt her vision blur. But she stood tall, her voice growing clearer with each word, as if Lucas was borrowing her to finally say what he couldn't while he was alive. "If anyone in this room is looking at you with blame in their eyes, let them know this. You didn't leave me. I left you when you were standing there, hand outstretched, and I turned my back. And if there's one thing I can do only through this final letter, it's to let you know. I saw you. I knew you were worth loving, worth protecting, and worth choosing. I only regret realizing it too late." By now, many in the room had bowed their heads. A few sniffles broke the silence. Lucas's sister, Vanessa, sat frozen, her hand covering her mouth. His mother turned away, gripping her hands together tightly. Isabel gently folded the letter, then looked around. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't trembling. "Lucas didn't need my forgiveness. But I think these words are his way of apologizing not just to me, but to everyone who ever thought love always comes with enough time." She stepped down from the podium and quietly returned to her seat. The priest bowed his head in gratitude. No words necessary. No one stopped her now. No one dared say, "You shouldn't be here." Because everyone knew if anyone deserved to be here, it was her. When the service ended, several people came to shake Isabel's hand. A few placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, saying nothing, but their eyes softer now as if they finally understood. Sometimes a person doesn't need to prove anything. They just need to stand still and speak the truth. Vanessa came last. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes shimmering. "I am sorry," she said, her voice hoarse. Isabel nodded. "I understand. He cried in his car after you broke up. But he never said anything. I just wish he'd said it all sooner." They didn't hug. They didn't need to. They simply stood next to each other in silence as two people guarding a memory that could never be touched again. That evening, back in her hotel room, Isabel placed the letter in a simple wooden frame. Below it, she wrote a single line. "I didn't come to reclaim the past. I came to return a truth, one that sometimes only the ending has the courage to say." The next morning, as the gentle early autumn sunlight filtered through the hotel curtains, Isabel was still in bed. She lay still, eyes wide open, holding the framed letter from Lucas, as if loosening her grip would cause every emotion from the night before to dissolve into nothingness. She didn't quite know what this feeling was, not sorrow, not peace. Just emptiness, like she'd walked a long emotional journey and no longer had the energy to ask herself, "Where am I now?" A knock at the door startled her. She got up, opened it, and saw Vanessa standing there, her face pale, but her eyes far softer than they had been the first day they reunited. "There's something I think you should have." Vanessa handed Isabel a small dark wooden box, latched with a brass clasp. On the lid, engraved in Lucas's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, Isabel Hart. "We were clearing out Lucas's things from his private studio," Vanessa said quietly. "I was going to keep this, but then I read a note in one of his journals. It said, 'Give this to her if I'm no longer around.'" Isabel held the box to her chest, as if inside it were everything Lucas had never managed to say. "Thank you," she whispered. Vanessa gave a small nod, then turned and walked away, leaving Isabel alone with the box and a strange, heavy sense of anticipation waiting to be unlocked. Inside the room, she placed the box on the table. Her fingers hovered over the latch for a few seconds before clicking it open. The sound was soft, but inside her, it felt like an explosion. Inside the box, a black and white photo of the two of them, taken during that winter at the park. Isabel remembered the day clearly, the snow falling lightly, and Lucas sneaking a tiny pine branch into her hair. A weathered notebook, its first line written in blue ink. "If one day you go looking for what you lost, remember it never really left. It was just waiting to be heard." And at the bottom of the box, wrapped carefully in silver tissue paper, a round-trip plane ticket to Paris, departure date next month. Isabel froze. Her heart pounded so hard it was difficult to breathe. Paris, the city they once dreamed of visiting. They had planned the trip in detail, bookstore by bookstore, cafe by cafe, and the rooftop view of the Eiffel Tower where they would sip coffee and talk about everything and nothing. This plane ticket wasn't a suggestion. It was a message. Live what I didn't get the chance to. She opened the notebook. The first page held a handwritten Laterno date. "My love, if you're holding that ticket, then you've been brave enough to forgive. And if you haven't, that's okay too. Keep it like keeping part of a dream. I once thought being strong meant suppressing emotion, enduring alone, living to satisfy others. But when you left, I learned. Strength is reaching for someone's hand when they walk into the dark, even if you're afraid yourself. You once held my hand that way, and I let go. This time I have no hand to offer. But I hope you keep walking, not to forget me, but to remember yourself." Isabel closed the notebook, tears soaking her face, though she hadn't even noticed them falling. Not because of pain, but because she felt she had finally touched something she'd only dared to dream about for over a year. Acknowledgement. A truth finally spoken. And a permission to move forward without guilt, without shame. She placed everything back into the box, keeping only the ticket. Looking closely, she noticed a small note Lucas had scribbled on the back of it, in his familiar slanted handwriting. "Even if you go alone, I'll still be there with every heartbeat." That afternoon, Isabel stepped out onto the hotel balcony, the breeze gently sweeping through her hair. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. And for the first time, the name Lucas Hughes no longer felt like a weight. It felt warm. Not because the story had a happy ending, but because a story left unfinished had finally been heard completely. 1 week after the funeral, Isabel returned to St. Paul's Church carrying the wooden box. Not to return it, nor to seek more answers. She came back because she felt something remained unfinished, not for herself, but for those still trapped in silence, misunderstanding, and anger. Father Foster greeted her with a warm look. "Are you doing okay?" he asked, opening the church door. "Better than I expected," Isabel replied. "But I think there are still people who need to hear the whole story. Not from me, but from Lucas himself." That evening, with the priest's permission, Isabel held a small memorial in the chapel. It wasn't an official ceremony, no white flowers, no choir. Just a few wooden benches, the glow of yellow candles, and a small table holding the wooden box Lucas left behind. She didn't send invitations. Only messaged the closest people: Vanessa, Lucas's grandmother, a few old friends who used to play music with him. Anyone who wanted to come could come. No pressure. But the surprise was almost everyone showed up. Vanessa was the first to enter. She dressed simply, no makeup, and her eyes no longer held the icy sharpness from their first meeting. She quietly sat in the front row, hands resting on her knees, silently waiting. Lucas's grandmother, the stern-faced woman Isabel once feared, was the one who approached her. "You've given the whole family a different perspective. Today I come to look at you and Lucas with new eyes." Isabel bowed her head in thanks, her heart tightening not from sadness, but from being deeply moved. Sometimes a truth spoken at the right time can heal an entire family. Once everyone was seated, Isabel stepped onto the wooden podium.
No microphone.
No prepared speech. Just herself and a second letter from Lucas's journal that she had never read before. Lucas left another letter in his journal. This time it wasn't addressed to anyone in particular. I think he wanted everyone to hear it. She opened the page and carefully unfolded the paper. The handwriting was in blue ink, shaky as when Lucas was anxious. If there is one thing I could leave behind after leaving this life, it would be the truth. I used to live as if I were immortal, thinking all mistakes could be fixed, all relationships could be restarted. But time waits for no one. And silence sometimes kills the most beautiful things. I once loved Isabel. And I left her not because she wasn't enough, but because I didn't have the courage to defend what was right against the pressures of family and society. I let silence speak for me. I let the one I loved most bear all the pain because I didn't know how to love properly. The atmosphere in the church seemed to freeze. Vanessa lowered her gaze. A friend of Lucas quietly wiped tears away. Isabel looked at them for the first time. She no longer saw anyone as someone unwilling to listen. They were just people who never knew what they needed to hear. If Mom is reading this, I'm sorry I didn't speak honestly when I should have. If my sister is there, I'm sorry I let her think I was okay. And if you, Isabella, have the patience to keep reading, I just want you to know. You were never wrong to love me. I was the one who never learned to love you the right way. Don't blame them for blaming you. They only knew a version of Menet, the real person who was with you. And if anyone in this room ever stayed silent when they should have spoken, learn from my mistake. Don't wait until there's no chance left. Isabel closed the letter. In that moment the room was so quiet she could hear the wind outside the window. Then unexpectedly Vanessa stood up. With a voice both choked yet steady, she said, I used to hate you. Because I thought you hurt Lucas. But I never dared to look at my own pain from losing you. Isabel stood silently. Vanessa stepped forward and hugged her, a hug imperfect, slightly awkward, but incredibly sincere. Lucas's grandmother rose from her seat, walked up, and placed a hand on Isabel's shoulder. She said, You are the last thing he regretted losing. I hope you regret nothing. Isabel shook her head softly, tears stinging her eyes. I don't regret loving him. And now, I certainly don't regret staying to hear what needed to be said. The memorial ended in silence.
No applause. No speeches.
But everyone left the chapel with changed eyes. As if they had just buried not only a lost soul but also buried prejudice, silence, and everything that should never have existed in love. 3 days after the memorial, Isabel returned to her small apartment in New Haven, the place she had lived for the past 3 years after breaking up with Lucas. Everything in the apartment remained the same: the cream-colored armchair tilted by the window, the old bookshelf, and the chipped coffee mug she had used countless times. But she was no longer the same woman. The memories of Lucas, once a sharp ache in her heart, no longer haunted her like a ghost. They had transformed into a thin mist, still there, still making her heart tighten, but no longer causing her to lose her way. Isabel placed the wooden box Lucas left on the table. This time she no longer trembled as she opened it. She took out the yellowed black and white photo, the only picture of the two of them alone without anyone else in the frame. It was a winter afternoon in Central Park. She wore a long coat, and Lucas draped a scarf around her neck before unexpectedly kissing her cheek. She burst out laughing just as the camera clicked. The smile in that photo so bright that even now she barely recognized the radiant person she once was. Beneath the photo was a note. You once said, we don't need to keep every moment, just one good one to remind us we were happy. For me, this is that photo. Isabel placed the photo in front of her, sat down on the floor, and leaned against the sofa. She recalled the feeling of being with Lucas, not perfect but safe. As if in those few moments she was fully seen without trying, without pretending to be strong. She then opened a small compartment in the box, intricately carved, as if hiding a final secret. Inside was a stack of papers. The itinerary for the Paris trip. Lucas had planned everything. Day 1. Coffee at Le Consulate in Montmartre. Day 2. Visit Shakespeare and Company, the old bookstore she had said she wanted to see. Day 3. Dinner beneath the Eiffel Tower lights. Day 4. No plans, just holding your hand and wandering the city. Isabel both laughed and cried reading the last line. Lucas always said, "The best plan is no plan as long as I'm with you." But he never said that aloud while alive. Only after he was gone did he leave these fragments, making her realize he had thought of her more than she ever knew. She put the itinerary back in the box, then wrote on the notebook cover, "Paris is not just a destination. It is the final blessing he left for me to learn how to move forward." That evening, Isabel called Miriam. "Do you have a plane ticket?" Isabel asked. "What are you about to do?" Miriam was surprised. "I'm going to Paris. Alone." "But not really alone," Isabel softly replied. On the other end, Miriam was silent for a moment, then gently said, "Go, Belle. And this time not to forget, but to live fully." 2 weeks before the flight, Isabel took a 3-month leave from work. She packed up, rescheduled her ongoing projects, and brought only a small suitcase, a blank notebook, and that old photo. The night before the flight, she opened her window, letting the night breeze play with her hair. She wondered, would Lucas know that what he left though late was enough to heal a once broken heart? She didn't need an answer. She only knew that tomorrow morning, when she stepped onto the plane, she would no longer carry the weight of loss. She would carry a promisito, live fully for both herself and the one who could not. Paris lay shrouded in a thin morning mist as Isabel stepped out of Charles de Gaulle Airport. A strange mixture of excitement and relief washed over her. This was not a vacation trip. It was a journey to heal and rediscover herself through every street, every corner cafe that Lucas had dreamed of showing her. On her very first day, in a small cafe by the Seine River, Isabel received a call from Vanessa, Lucas's sister. "I just sent a small package to your hotel. It contains things no one has ever known," Vanessa said, her voice low and hesitant. Isabel didn't ask for more, she just nodded. 2 days later, while savoring macarons in Luxembourg Park, Isabel received the package from the hotel front desk. Inside was a thick dossier and a handwritten letter, carefully marked by Vanessa. The letter was dated over 2 years ago and had never been sent. In it, Lucas revealed a secret known only to him and a few close family members. He had been suffocated by his family, forced to follow a life plan that wasn't his own, and had to part ways with Isabel not because his love had ended, but because he couldn't withstand the pressure from his relatives. "I didn't abandon you because I stopped loving you, but because I was afraid of losing everything: family, career, reputation if I stayed by your side. I chose silence to protect you from the endless fights within the house. But that silence killed us." Isabel read and reread the words, her heart twisting painfully. Now she truly understood Lucas was not a heartless man. He was torn between 2 worlds: love and duty, himself and the expectations of others. The dossier contained letters from Lucas's family addressed to him, filled with demands and veiled threats to break up with Isabel. These relentless pressures, these deep conflicts, were things he could share with no one, not even with her, the one he loved most. That evening, Isabel sat on the balcony of her hotel room, holding the letter, gazing at the glittering city lights below. She wondered if she had known everything from the start, would she have held on to him? Or would she have once again learned to let go? Tears fell gently onto the paper, not out of regret, but because at last she had the truth, not rumors, not judgments, but the genuine voice of the one she had loved. Isabel decided not to keep this story hidden. She began writing in her journal words full of truth and forgiveness for Lucas, for herself, and for all those who had to choose between heart and duty. In the following days, she visited the places Lucas had wanted to take her: the old bookstore Shakespeare and Company, the artistic streets of Montmartre, the small cafes beneath the Eiffel Tower. Each step was a promise to herself to never again let a love die because of silence or untold secrets. The night in Paris grew quieter than ever. Isabel sat by the hotel room window, the warm golden light reflecting off the freshly written pages of her journal. She set down her pen and gazed out at the bustling streets below, the same streets where she and Lucas had once walked, where promises had remained unfulfilled. In recent days, she had truly faced her past without avoidance or concealment. Each letter, every page of the dossier, was a puzzle piece helping her better understand the man she once loved, not just through joyful memories or pain, but through the difficult choices he was forced to make. She recalled Lucas's words from the unsent letter: "I didn't abandon you because I stopped loving you, but because I was afraid of losing everything. That statement made her realize that pain is not always an ending. It can be a gift that allows her to see the true nature of a person, to learn forgiveness, and to move forward. The next morning, Isabel went to a small cafe by the Seine, where she had arranged to meet a few new friends she had made during her trip. Among them was Emma, a young woman who had also experienced great losses in love. Emma looked at Isabel with deep empathy. "You know, I used to think suffering was a sign of failure. But now I understand it's how we grow, how we learn to love ourselves more." Isabel smiled, feeling as if their stories had blended into a soft, soothing melody that gently healed all wounds. That evening, Isabel attended a reading session for people on their healing journeys. She stood to share her story, not seeking pity, but inspiring those facing loss. Every word she spoke kindled a small flame in the hearts of her listeners. No matter how great the pain, there is always a path toward the light. And sometimes, it is in the deepest darkness that one finds their true strength. Returning to her hotel room, Isabel opened the wooden box once more. She took out the black and white photo, the last one they had together. This time she didn't feel sadness. Instead, she felt gratitude for the memories that taught her how to love, live, and let go. She placed the photo in a glass frame on her desk and wrote on a small piece of paper, "Thank you for teaching me that pain can also be a gift." Isabel's story did not end in Paris. It was only the beginning of a new chapter, one in which she learned to open her heart, embrace, and share love not only with others but with herself as well. 1 year after her trip to Paris, Isabel stood before a small audience at the local bookstore, soft lights illuminating her face. In front of her were friends, family, and strangers alike, people who had come to hear her story of love, loss, and the journey of healing she had undergone. On the table lay her debut book titled The Last Lettre, a sincere and raw journal chronicling her entire journey of facing the past, confronting pain, and rediscovering herself. Holding the book in her hands, Isabel smiled gently and began reading the opening passage. "I once thought love was a story you could rewrite many times. But then I realized that some stories are meant to be told only once, a single chance to love, and a single chance to let go." The room fell silent, the atmosphere heavy with profound empathy. She spoke about Lucas, her ex-lover who left suddenly, leaving behind not just sorrow but secrets revealed through his final letter. She shared her feelings of rejection and how she found the strength to move forward. Her words touched the hearts of everyone present, reminding them of their own moments of learning forgiveness, loving themselves, and courageously facing the truth. At the end of the book launch, a woman stood up, stepped closer to Isabel, and said, "Thank you for sharing your story. I am the mother of a son who recently lost his life partner. Your letter helped me understand that even though life can be harsh, love remains the greatest gift we can give and receive." Isabel smiled, her eyes shimmering with tears. "And I am the luckiest to have read and told this story. Because through it, I realize those who leave us can still be the light guiding our way." She sat down, feeling a profound peace fill her heart. Lucas was no longer by her side, but through every word and every story, he remained her final reader, the last companion on her journey of healing.